It started quietly, a rumor whispered through locker rooms, a headline half buried on sports blogs. But within hours, it exploded. Adam Silver, the most powerful commissioner in basketball, had stepped into the chaos of the WNBA. What began as whispers of concern turned into full-blown panic. Players started checking their phones. Agents started calling. Executives went silent. Because when the NBA's top man personally interferes with the women's league, something seismic is about to happen. This wasn't about partnership anymore. This was about survival. And one player's global fame had just forced the commissioner's hand. For months, the WNBA had been spinning out of control. Negotiations frozen. Player frustration boiling. The league's own future hanging by a thread. But now, with a lockout threatening to wipe out everything Caitlin Clark had helped build, Silver's patience finally snapped. Sources said he'd watched long enough, watched the sponsorships rise, watched the fans flood arenas, watched the energy Caitlin brought, only to see it all teeter on incompetence. The man who oversees billion-dollar empires decided he wasn't going to let a single failed commissioner burn the whole thing down. Inside league offices, the tension was unbearable. Cathy Engelbert, once praised as a face of progress, was now seen as the ghost of failure. Meetings canceled, calls unanswered, and silence that stretched for weeks. Owners stopped defending her. Players stopped trusting her. Even sponsors stopped returning calls. And in that vacuum of leadership, one truth began to echo louder than anything else. Adam Silver was taking control. No one voted. No one announced it. He just did it. Because when a ship is sinking, someone has to grab the wheel. Players could feel the shift before the media even caught on. Some called it intervention. Others called it a rescue mission. And at the center of that rescue was Caitlin Clark, the player who had single-handedly reignited the WNBA's heartbeat. Every sellout, every headline, every highlight reel screamed her name. She was the league's golden light. But behind that glow, she could see the cracks forming. What good is fame if the foundation beneath you is crumbling? That's why Silver stepped in. He wasn't just saving the WNBA. He was protecting its most valuable star. The story became bigger than sports. It became about credibility, legacy, and power. Silver wasn't supposed to meddle, but he'd had enough of watching Engelbert let the momentum slip. He saw what Caitlin had created. Hope, visibility, money. And he knew one lockout could erase it all. The plan forming in his mind wasn't about patching problems. It was about rebuilding the entire system from the ground up. And the most shocking part? His first move wasn't domestic. It was global. While everyone else argued over contracts, Silver was already looking toward China. By now, players had stopped pretending everything was fine. Candace Parker, Sabrina Ionescu, legends and rising icons alike, had grown tired of waiting for leadership that never came. They'd text Engelbert and get nothing. They'd raise concerns and get silence. Yet somehow, every major life moment brought a message from Adam Silver. A baby gift, a congratulatory text, a note of appreciation. That consistency wasn't coincidence. It was leadership, quiet, steady, and human. And in a league starved for communication, Silver's simple gestures became a symbol of the stability everyone else had given up on. The divide between Engelbert and her players had never been clearer. At jersey retirements, she was absent. At celebrations, she was silent. The locker room felt abandoned, the fans confused. And as frustration turned to resentment, the players began comparing notes. Each conversation led back to one shocking truth. They all had better relationships with Adam Silver than their own commissioner. The irony was painful. The NBA's boss was showing more care to WNBA players than the person actually paid to lead them. To many, that wasn't just disappointing. It was humiliating as that realization spread. So did the rumors. League insiders whispered that Engelbert's days were numbered. Sponsors started asking questions. Owners began holding private calls without her. And somewhere in the chaos, Adam Silver made his move. Sources described it like a corporate coup, but quieter, more surgical. No press releases, no public drama, just power shifting hands behind closed doors. One executive called it a calm storm. While Engelbert's office sat quiet, Silver's phone buzzed nonstop. He was building something new, and it started with 3 simple words: "I'll handle it." That moment marked a turning point for women's basketball. What began as damage control became a full-blown reorganization. Silver was done letting incompetence dictate the future of the game. The WNBA wasn't a side project anymore. It was an empire in crisis, and the NBA couldn't afford to let it collapse. Sponsors were intertwined. Broadcasting deals were shared. Every stumble in the WNBA reflected back on the NBA's image. Silver understood that better than anyone. If Caitlin Clark's success symbolized growth, Engelbert's silence symbolized decay. The contrast couldn't have been sharper or more urgent. Then came the headline that no one saw coming. Adam Silver discusses WNBA expansion into China. Fans thought it was a misprint. It wasn't. During a courtside interview in Macau, Silver casually revealed that he wanted to bring the WNBA overseas, to Macau and mainland China. It sounded insane at first, but the logic was brilliant. While the WNBA's internal politics froze progress at home, Silver saw untapped opportunity abroad. China's basketball audience was massive, larger than the U.S. population. And with Caitlin Clark's fame spreading globally, Silver saw his moment to turn crisis into evolution. The idea wasn't random. It was strategic. Silver knew that international markets could do what domestic management had failed to achieve, make the WNBA profitable. A single exhibition series in China could draw millions in sponsorships, broadcast rights, and merchandising. More importantly, it would position Caitlin Clark and her peers as global stars, not just national icons. The plan was daring, maybe even reckless, but that's what made it captivating. Silver wasn't just fixing the league's problems, he was reinventing it. And the WNBA office, still paralyzed by indecision, could only watch as he rewrote their future. Behind the scenes, the NBA's top brass were stunned. No one had expected Silver to move this fast. Insiders described the shift as a quiet takeover. He began assembling teams of lawyers, marketers, and international advisors, people who usually only handled NBA deals worth billions. This wasn't advisory support. This was command. Engelbert was being pushed to the sidelines, her authority eroded by competence. To the public, it still looked like collaboration, but those in the know saw it clearly. Silver wasn't waiting for permission. He was already running the WNBA, one decision at a time. The power shift didn't go unnoticed. Players began speaking out, not with anger, but relief. Finally, someone was listening. Finally, someone was acting. For the first time in years, there was optimism in the air. Caitlin Clark, once forced to navigate a league trapped in mediocrity, now found herself at the center of a global renaissance. Her name wasn't just filling arenas, it was rewriting history. And while Engelbert clung to her title, the players had already chosen their leader. Silver didn't need a press conference to claim control. The respect of his players said it all. The relationship between Caitlin Clark and Adam Silver became the unofficial heartbeat of this transformation. Silver saw in Clark what the league had been missing, a generational superstar who could unite fans and sponsors alike. And Clark saw in Silver something she'd never seen before in WNBA leadership, accountability. While Engelbert hid behind emails, Silver showed up. He didn't need to shout. His actions spoke for him. Every time he praised the women's game, fans listened. Every time he hinted at expansion, headlines followed. Slowly, methodically, the narrative began to shift. The WNBA was back, under new management. But with every step forward, the drama deepened. Engelbert's silence became deafening. The commissioner who once promised transformation had become invisible. Players began calling it the ghost regime. Union reps privately admitted they no longer trusted her office. Meanwhile, Silver's team was already negotiating media packages, sponsorship deals, and international appearances. He wasn't waiting for bureaucracy to catch up. He was building momentum in real time. It was ruthless, efficient, and undeniably effective. For the first time in decades, the WNBA wasn't reacting to problems. It was being led by someone who actually knew how to win. That leadership style was contagious. Owners who'd once been skeptical were suddenly re-engaged. They saw the bigger picture, a global league with international investment. Sponsors began returning calls. Networks began renegotiating contracts. Even the players, long jaded by broken promises, started to believe again. Silver didn't just bring stability. He brought hope. Caitlin Clark's journey had proven that visibility could change everything. Now, under Silver's plan, that visibility was going global. The idea of a WNBA game in China wasn't just logistics. It was symbolism. It told every player, you're finally being treated like professionals. The timing couldn't have been more critical. The WNBA was riding unprecedented momentum, record attendance, record viewership, record engagement. Caitlin Clark was everywhere, talk shows, endorsements, and documentaries. The league had finally found its mainstream moment. but behind the glitz was fear. One wrong move could send it all crashing down. Silver knew it. The sponsors knew it. And Engelbert? She couldn't even be reached for comment. Her absence had become the story. Every day she stayed silent. Silver's shadow grew larger. By now, fans weren't asking who led the WNBA. They were asking why she still did. Silver's next move shocked even insiders. He planned to personally attend the next round of CBA negotiations. That had never happened before. The NBA commissioner stepping into WNBA labor talks? Unheard of. But Silver didn't care about protocol. He cared about results. His message was clear. No lockout, no excuses. He wanted the deal signed, sealed, and stable before chaos could strike. The players, exhausted from years of dead ends, welcomed him with open arms. For once, the person in charge wasn't just talking about progress. He was physically showing up to make it happen. Every action Silver took was calculated. Publicly, he downplayed the power shift. Privately, he was assembling a rescue operation. Engelbert was still technically in charge, but functionally irrelevant. Silver didn't fire her. He didn't have to. He simply outperformed her. The contrast became impossible to ignore. While Engelbert gave speeches about empowerment, Silver was empowering people. While she promised change, he delivered it. And with every quiet win, players began aligning themselves under his leadership. To them, it wasn't rebellion. It was common sense. The league had finally found a leader who didn't just talk about growth. He lived it. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark stood at the center of it all, both symbol and catalyst. Her success had forced the world to pay attention. Her popularity had made sponsors reevaluate their priorities. And now, her name was being mentioned in the same breath as international expansion. Imagine it. Caitlin Clark playing in front of packed arenas in China, representing not just a team, but an entire movement. Silver's plan gave her that possibility. It gave the league that possibility. Suddenly, what once felt like fantasy, women's basketball as a global phenomenon, started to feel inevitable. The irony of it all was impossible to ignore. The woman meant to lead the WNBA into a new era had vanished, while the man leading another league entirely had become its savior. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. But in sports, leadership isn't about titles. It's about presence. And Adam Silver's presence was unmistakable. Every time he spoke, the tone shifted. Every time he appeared courtside, the cameras followed. He had turned a potential disaster into a story of redemption. For the first time in years, fans weren't rolling their eyes at the WNBA. They were watching intently behind closed doors. The owners couldn't hide their relief. They waited months for someone to bring order back. Silver was that order. His track record spoke for itself. Expanding the NBA globally, navigating political backlash, surviving billion-dollar crises. Compared to that, fixing the WNBA looked easy. But it wasn't just about business. It was personal. Silver believed in women's basketball, not as a charity project, but as a product worth fighting for. Caitlin Clark's rise had proven there was an audience. Now he was determined to build the infrastructure to support it. The message was simple. Never again chaos. The plan was massive. China was only the beginning. Sources hinted at talks with European markets, potential partnerships in Australia, even preseason tours in South America. Silver wasn't dreaming small. He wanted to build the women's equivalent of the NBA's global empire. And while Engelbert sat on the sidelines, he was drawing the blueprint. Every new meeting reinforced his dominance. Every sponsor sign proved his strategy was working. The world was watching him transform a broken league into a worldwide brand. For players who had begged for attention, this wasn't just progress, it was vindication. Caitlin Clark became the face of this rebirth, willingly or not. Every headline used her name. Every broadcast featured her highlights. Silver knew the power of narrative, and he wasn't afraid to use it. Clark wasn't just a player. She was a story, a symbol of what women's basketball could become. Her fame wasn't the problem. It was a fuel. And when Silver talked about expanding the league globally, it was her image that carried the vision. She had become the living embodiment of what happens when talent meets opportunity. And finally, the infrastructure was catching up, but for all the optimism, there was still an undercurrent of tension. Some feared that Silver's involvement meant the NBA would overshadow the WNBA entirely. Others whispered that Engelbert's quiet removal was undemocratic. Yet, for most players and fans, those concerns felt small compared to the relief of progress. For the first time in years, the WNBA had direction. It had energy. It had leadership. Silver's method wasn't gentle, but it was necessary. When a system is broken, politeness doesn't fix it. Action does. And Adam Silver was all action. The results spoke louder than any press release ever could. The deeper you looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't a partnership anymore. This was a takeover. But it wasn't hostile. It was surgical. Engelbert kept her title, her office, her salary. Silver kept the power, the trust, the results. It was a quiet, dethroning disguise as collaboration. And the best part? Everyone seemed okay with it. The players got hope. The owners got stability. The league got momentum. Silver didn't need to fire Engelbert. He simply made her irrelevant. The WNBA wasn't being run from New York anymore. It was being run from wherever Adam Silver decided to sit. Even in his most diplomatic statements, Silver's intentions were transparent. He wasn't fixing problems. He was planning decades ahead. When reporters asked about the China expansion, he smiled and said, "Very soon." It wasn't a tease. It was a warning. He'd already started aligning international sponsors and basketball federations. The groundwork was done. The logistics were forming. And while the media obsessed over sound bites, the real story was unfolding behind the curtain. Silver wasn't saving the WNBA temporarily. He was re-engineering its DNA. What David Stern did for the NBA in the 90s, Silver was now doing for women's basketball. As the dust settled, one question echoed across the sports world. Where does this leave Cathy Engelbert? Insiders said she was still technically commissioner, but everyone knew the truth. She'd been replaced without being fired. Her silence had written her own ending, and though she might linger in the background, her era was over. The league she once promised to modernize had outgrown her. In a way, that was poetic. The WNBA didn't fall because of scandal or corruption. It fell because of stagnation. And Adam Silver's arrival was a reckoning that finally set it free. For Caitlin Clark, the shift was both thrilling and terrifying. On one hand, she was becoming the global face of a reborn league. On the other, she was stepping into uncharted territory. Playing in China, leading international tours, being marketed like a global celebrity, it was a lot to process. But if anyone could handle it, it was her. She'd already carried the weight of the league once. Now, under Silver's vision, she had the chance to elevate beyond anything women's basketball had ever known. Her talent was the spark. His leadership was the fuel. Together, they were unstoppable. The connection between them was never personal, but it was powerful. Silver represented structure. Caitlin represented purpose. Together, they embodied what the WNBA had been missing: vision. When Silver talked about no lockout, no excuses, fans saw Caitlin's face. When Caitlin spoke about wanting better conditions, fans remembered Silver's promise. They became the dual protagonists of a league on the brink of rebirth. One had power, the other had influence. And between them, they turned what could have been another failed era into the beginning of something extraordinary, a story of leadership, resilience, and redemption. It's easy to forget how close it all came to collapse. Just months earlier, the league was on life support, players frustrated, fans disengaged, owners disillusioned. The tension was suffocating. But now, with Silver at the helm, optimism was spreading faster than gossip. The WNBA wasn't just surviving, it was strategizing. Every player meeting, every press event, every contract negotiation carried a new tone. Confident, professional, determined. For years, people said women's basketball needed a miracle. Turns out, it didn't need a miracle at all. It just needed someone who actually knew how to lead. As the WNBA prepares for its next chapter, the world watches with cautious awe. Adam Silver's fingerprints are everywhere. The deals, the diplomacy, the discipline. And Caitlin Clark stands at the center, no longer just a rookie phenomenon, but a global ambassador for the sport. Together, they've turned crisis into momentum, chaos into opportunity. It's the kind of story Hollywood couldn't script, yet it's real. And as whispers of international games grow louder, one thing becomes clear. The WNBA isn't just back. It's finally becoming what was always meant to be: unstoppable. Because in the end, this isn't a story about China. It's not even just about Caitlin Clark or Cathy Engelbert. It's about power. Who has it?